Well, I'll tell you what, the first thing I wanted to do was tell you who I am and why I'm here, because I think that's important. I'm a little different from the speakers you've seen before. I'm coming out of the Defense Department. I don't think I've seen a Defense Department speaker up here yet. So let me just tell you why I care and why the Defense Department cares about what's going on in new space and more largely in commercial space generally. DARPA, the Defense Advanced Research Project Agency, was founded back in 1958, and the reason it was founded was because of Sputnik. Because we saw a problem, we saw a Soviet Union that looked like it might become dominant, transcendent in space, and we needed to figure out how to react to that. So DARPA's charter is to prevent or to create technical surprise. That's what we're for. Now, it was a little late for Sputnik because we got surprised, but the Eisenhower administration said, hey, we don't want to let this happen again. We want to make sure this does not occur very often because we would like to give our armed forces the best capabilities they have, and having somebody overhead watching us all the time is probably not the right way to do that. So DARPA got stood up, and right away, let me see, how do we do this? Is this the clicker here? All right. And right away, we did some very interesting things. We helped stand up the National Reconnaissance Office. We helped stand up NASA. We helped build the F-1 engine, the Corona reconnaissance systems, Transit, which was the forerunner of GPS, ARPANET. All of these things came out of DARPA, but they came out of DARPA because of the smart, innovative minds we had working with us. It wasn't the DARPA program managers or leadership. It was the folks we had working with us who had the incredible, innovative concepts that made it go. So, I'm here because I think it's time to have that conversation again, because we're, frankly, in the midst of what I believe to be a little bit of a crisis. And I see some glimmers of hope, don't get me wrong. And in fact, I see a lot of them here. But I will tell you that our community, writ large, the space community, is very mature. And I've been told I can't say old space, so I won't say that. But the truth is that we've been doing this for 60 years, and we've been doing it with a certain set of methodologies and capabilities. And we've gotten really good at it. We've gotten really good at it. In fact, we're so good at it that it takes us forever to build things, and it costs ungodly billions to get stuff up. That's a problem. And it's a problem because it's a potential entry point for technical surprise. Because if it takes me 20 years to build a constellation of geosatellites to do, say, I don't know, ballistic missile early warning, and it costs me $20 billion, that's a problem. Because somebody might figure out how to put up similar capabilities or develop countermeasures in that intervening space. And you might not be surprised to find out that, guess what, our adversaries do just that. So, the technical surprise that I would like to prevent, and the technical surprise I'd like to create, is to get us back on track as an innovative space community. How do you do that, right? What do you do about that? Well, let's see. So these are some of the challenges. I wouldn't look too closely at the charts. I'm not sure I love this chart all that much, but the pieces, at least the two top ones, I'd like to discuss. Launch flexibility. We don't have it. We do not have it. And by the way, my hat's off to SpaceX, because I think SpaceX has done wondrous things in creating a gorgeous tension in the launch community that has not existed for a very long time. As a long-time Air Force officer and DoD guy, I had been waiting for someone to come up and say, how can we make this problem a little different? How can we solve it a little bit differently? And I think SpaceX is poking at some things which are creating just an incredible amount of questioning and tension, which I think we really needed. So competition is innovation. Innovation is competition. Asking those questions, how do we do things differently? That's what it's all about. But the truth is that right now, we're kind of stuck because we have long call-up times, we have large space launch vehicles, and that pretty much means that little guys, especially, can't get a ride. And I know, I get it, there's ESPA out there and all sorts of rideshare capabilities. But the truth is that I would much rather have my own launch vehicle, if I were a 500-kilogram satellite, than wait for somebody else to build a large primary bus-sized spacecraft and then wonder when I'm going to get to go. And I can tell you right now, I've got programs in my portfolio where we've been waiting 3 years for a launch. And I can tell you that that does no good to the little guy who is trying to build and launch that small satellite. Their company, their investment, everything they've done is riding on whether they can get to orbit and prove out that capability. It's very hard to do. So we have a flexibility problem in launch, and we need to solve this, mainly down at the low end. I want to talk a little bit about spacecraft. I've actually been very, very happy to see what's been going on in the satellite bus arena. There's a million ideas out there. The CubeSat concepts, the small satellite, nanosatellite concepts, putting more capability onto those size systems has just been absolutely revolutionary, and I think it will continue to be. But there's a part that's missing, and that part is the payload. I think the buses are in great shape. I think people are figuring out how to commoditize them and how to make them in a mass production sense. I see a lot of companies out there doing that. But I will tell you, at least from my vantage, that what I see is a very, very exquisite mindset to payloads that does not match the small satellite bus methodology. And we've got to change that. We've got to figure out how to get the folks who currently want to build me very exquisite payloads to step back for a minute and figure out how do they get on the same path that the bus guys are. Because I'm not going to pay $1 million for a bus, get it off a production line, and then wait 5 years and spend $100 million for this wonderful, say, infrared optic. I can't do that. It makes no sense. So it puts us in a bind. So those two pieces have to come together. The last piece I'll address here, I'm not going to touch on the space domain awareness part right now. The last piece here is on architectures. So we have matured into an architecture which is composed mainly of very expensive, very complex, monolithic things. They are Maseratis, they are Rolls-Royces. They require a lot of manual labor, touch labor, a lot of test, a lot of independent verification and validation activities. That's all cost, that's all schedule. It's a fragile architecture. It's a high-value asset-based architecture, which means there's only going to be a few of them, and they're all expensive. And you know, if your adversary, you might consider, hey, if they've only got 2 or 3 of those things, it might be worth me considering a countermeasure to figure out how to deal with that problem. If you had a few hundred, it might be a deterrent. But 2 or 3, I might build that countermeasure. So we're in a bad place with respect to architectures in terms of space. And we need to investigate alternatives to that architecture. Certainly for DoD applications, but I think the beauty of this is there's so much going on right now in the new space community that could potentially address this. It's very exciting. There's so much potential synergy here. Okay, so this is why I'm just absolutely thrilled. We have a true renaissance underway. Now, I don't know how long it's going to last because I can't speak for the venture capitalists. I worry that in a couple or 3 years, the fad will fade. The VCs will say, hey, that was interesting while it lasted. I can't remember what was on the Martian anymore. I forgot. What are we going to do about that? We need to strike while the iron is hot, while all that money is available on the commercial side. I want to be able to leverage that from the defense side. I want to work with those commercial partners to put up the new architecture, the new capabilities that I know we need to be successful as an America in the 21st century. I spoke pretty much to the small satellites issue, and then finally the launch thing. We know this is tremendous. So much work going on right now. Hats off again to the SpaceX and Blue guys. But of course, there are a lot of others that are out there: Virgin, Strato, a lot of little guys, Vector, Inventions, and the like, doing just incredible work at the low end. And I think if we nurture these guys properly, we might get some real exciting capability out of them. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to talk to a few of the things that DARPA is doing right now in this arena, in this new space architecture arena, and talk to you about how a lot of this is going to be public-private partnerships. It's not going to be a simple government play. We're very interested in getting on board with commercial partners to go do this because we truly see the dual use that comes out of this. The first here is XSP, Experimental Spaceplane. One of my program managers here is responsible for this program with Boeing. The idea is, as it says, to fly 10 times in 10 days. Now, that's going to be really hard. we are not used to this, all right? We don't know how to do this yet. I will argue with anybody who tells me we know how to do this. This is a hard problem. And we want to do it at a cost point that's going to be very interesting. And we want to do this for a reason, because we need to figure out how to demonstrate true aircraft-like access and be able to provide truly responsive capabilities on orbit. I need to be able to replenish my constellations because I'm looking forward to constellations of thousands. And if I have constellations of thousands, I can't wait a year or two to get manifested. I can't do that. We've got to figure out how to do something like this so that if I need it next week, I can get it next week. This is going to be a tough problem, though. As you can see, it's going to be a two-staged orbit system as a demonstration, and we're going to be shooting on that last flight attempt to put 900 pounds into orbit. That's going to happen over the next couple of years. The first thing we're going to do is try to do 10 static firings in a row, once a day for 10 days. So we'll see how the engine works after 10 days. That's going to be a lot of fun. So pay attention, stay tuned to that one. Another interesting problem. We have a lot of legacy spacecraft, and a lot of them are up in geosynchronous orbit. There's a lot of money, a lot of investment tied up in the capabilities we have up there. And it's not a sanctuary. We're not the only ones up there anymore. So the Defense Department obviously has some concerns about how to make sure that our systems keep operating. At the same time, commercial vendors who own, and operators who own these systems up in GEOCOM satellites, for example, they want to get the full use out of these systems. And if they break early or they don't quite make it to orbit, that's a terrible loss. Now, admittedly, there's a reason we have insurance and that's it. But wouldn't it be nice if we could potentially go up into GEO, perform inspections, potentially move satellites around, correct problems such as stuck booms or antennas, and install or retrofit new capability? I'll tell you right now, it'd be great for the Defense Department. The idea of being able to retrofit legacy spacecraft that we have spent billions on would be very useful for us. I would love to be able to go up there and install new capabilities that would allow me just to have situational awareness of my environment while I'm up in geosynchronous orbit. That would be very valuable. At the same time, if I'm a commercial operator and I lose a transponder or I have a power issue, it would be great to be able to drop by with a vehicle like this, inspect, diagnose the problem, potentially repair it, put it back in service, and save quite a bit of money. So there's a lot of value to this. We're working with SSL out of Palo Alto to put together this capability. DARPA is bringing, with the Naval Research Laboratory, the dexterous robotic payload, which is the robotic arms, essentially. And SSL is bringing the bus. So we're going to merge those together. We're going to go do demonstration on orbit. We're shooting for 2021, although we might not get a launch until 2023. And then at that point, we're going to hand it all over to SSL and let them operate commercially. And then we'll do essentially a fee for service if we have a problem with a national security asset. Or at least that's the concept. So, let's see if I can find my clicker again. In conjunction with that, we recognize that there's going to be a lot more traffic up in places like GEO. And we thought it would be useful to sit down and discuss rules of the road. How are we going to actually do rendezvous and proximity operations with commercial vendors, with national security satellites? How are we going to get up close and personal? What are the rules for all of this? What are we going to allow? And we thought the best way to do this would be for us to sit down with NASA and kickstart this discussion. And so we just recently awarded a contract to Secure World Foundation to go off and look at this CONFERS effort, which is really the establishment of a consortium to discuss standards and rules for how we operate, similar to rules of the sea, navigation. I think this is going to be very interesting. I will tell you right now that this is not a normal DARPA play. However, we think it's so important that we get this right that we wanted to be involved at the beginning, but we also want to make sure that after a couple years, it's something that can stand on its own in industry. We really believe this should be a commercially driven activity first. So that's where we're going there. And the last thing, which I couldn't find my slide for, and it may just be that I missed it in there somewhere, and the one that's quite exciting to me, we're trying to figure out how to move away from these high-value assets and get ourselves onto something completely different. How can we harness some of this LEO broadband capability that we think may be about to fly. How do we do that? How does the Defense Department do it? How does the government, from a larger sense, do this? And so our thought process right now is over the next coming months, we're going to be looking into how do we engage with the community of mega constellation operators to see if there's a way for us to put nodes on those networks. Because I will tell you, the first company that does this right just created the space internet. If they do it right, they will have created the space internet. And we will put nodes on that internet. And there are so many interesting advantages that will accrue to us if we do that. If I can talk through that kind of network, I can reach anybody on the planet and provide my data to anyone at all. So I think that's a very exciting place to go. And the beauty of it here is it may be commercially pushed because, frankly, if the DoD had to do it, we'd spend $20 billion. And I'm not sure what would be on the back end. So we don't want to do that. So I think the right answer here, it's a perfect place for synergy. It's a perfect place for the commercial sector and ourselves to come together and say, we have a confluence of needs. We certainly need something that will be innovative and upgradable, something that I can replace systems in and out, something that's just inherently resilient. Because with thousands on orbit, I would argue you're not even going to want to take a shot. I don't even know why anybody would bother. It's just too resilient. It's a wonderful deterrent. So from the DoD standpoint, it's great. And there's no doubt in my mind that the folks who are putting this together on the commercial side, well, they're going to have to justify their own business case. But I will be happy to use the system when they arrive. So what else can I tell you? I'll tell you one last quick thing. I talked a little bit about experimental spaceplane, but I want you to know that I am engaging in a little bit of a hedge because I'm very interested in some of the expendable stuff at the very low end. I really want to see a community of small launchers out there. I'll call it orbits for orbits. I just want to jump online at some point and be able to say, I need to fly a 100-kilogram class payload next Monday. Of the 6 or 7 of you that are out there, who can do that? Anybody? You, 2, 3, 4? And take either the best bid or the best optimized orbit or whatever it might be to get myself on orbit. I think that would finally release the bottleneck we have and would allow for this architectural change that I've been discussing. So that's something else we're looking at DARPA, and I don't have a program plan for you on that one yet because we're still thinking through how to help out that community. There's a fair amount of money going in there, but a lot of confusion as to what the best way there is for government to assist. And as you all know, the government's just here to help. So, all right. That's really all I've got for you. I guess what I would tell you is, I was a Mars freak from way back, so I love coming here. The NASA focus, the interest in Deep Space Gateway and going to Mars, it was my first love. I shunted myself into DoD because in 1991, as it turned out, we were going to go back to the moon and onto Mars. And I said, the minute we do, I'm going to jump across. We never quite got there. I'm still here in DoD, but we're still doing a lot of good work. So much of this is interchangeable. Through commercial, through civil, all of this good stuff in space is, I'll call it triple use. We can all use the good stuff that's coming out. And the reason it's going to be really good is because of the innovation from all of you. And that's what DARPA's for, is to nurture and pull out that innovation. So anyway, that's what I've got for you. Thanks very much. Appreciate the chance to talk. So, you're going to ask me questions?
Got a couple questions for you.
Sure.
Thank you for your talk.
Okay.
Confers. I'm personally very interested in this. I've spent a little bit of time in the international arena, working with UN COPUOS and such.
Yeah.
This idea of satellite servicing gives some of our international partners the pause, yes, the heebie-jeebies, if you will. It's great that you've worked with Secure World Foundation. They have a very good international footprint. How do you anticipate engaging the international community in this
I anticipate
topic?
that the international community will be more than welcome to come in and talk to us. In fact, they have to, really, because there's an international presence in GEO. I don't know how we get away with it without it. We can't assign a set of rules to the U.S. and say, these are what we propose for everybody. So I would invite all the international partners to come in as soon as they want to and just tell us what they'd like to do, how they'd like to participate.
Great. So they are part of the C in Confers, the
Absolutely.
consortium element.
Absolutely.
Good. That's great to hear. Going back to RSGS and some of the servicing, there's some question about the architecture that you implied here. Is the idea that so the spacecraft would have some sort of its own situational awareness, surveying its own environment, and then it sends that information down to a network. How does that?
So what I was trying to suggest there was that the individual satellites that we currently have on orbit were never built to do any of that, right? So the situational awareness is not there. Our DoD satellites, for the most part, can't see their own environment. They might be able to see the Earth very well, but they cannot figure out what's going on around them. They simply weren't built that way. So wouldn't it be great if RSGS could come along and essentially retrofit a box and say, okay, well, there's a camera. If nothing else, it's a 2-pi camera. At least I can see, this half of the orbit from where I am.
Going around.
So that's the idea.
Okay.
That's the concept. And there are other things you can imagine you might want to retrofit satellites with, but that's certainly one of the concepts.
Okay, excellent. Let's talk, sorry for backing up the train. I want to go back to the international question for a second because there's some more interest in it among the audience members. You said they are going to be invited. Have you already started to have some discussions with them, and what has been the initial reaction?
So we're in early days, so no, we have not done that yet.
Okay.
We've basically been talking with the interagency to discuss how to set up confers, and we just made the award. But given Secure World's long-standing interest in the international community, I don't think there's going to be a problem. We're going to see those invitations come out soon. But we want to get our ducks in a row first.
Okay, excellent. Sounds like a solid, patient approach. You're going to need the patience in the international community.
Yeah, I was in Geneva earlier this spring, and I felt that.
You get it.
For patience.
You get it. But the fact that they're already opening up the dialogue is important because these are not the types of things that one should be jamming down the throat of our friends internationally.
I
Obviously,
agree.
this is very.
And by the way, that's why I want to back DARPA out of it. Because what I don't want to insinuate is somehow that this is a defense-led activity.
Right.
The thought is, no, we need these rules of the road for everybody, for transportation, for commerce. It's a commerce question. It's really less of a DoD question.
Right, absolutely. And there have been regions before that have tried to move this forward. So hopefully there will be engagement of lessons learned from that.
We'll give it a shot.
Want to ask a question here about robotic installations as constant fixtures on the satellites, or is the idea to detach them afterwards? Is there thoughts on how that works and how do you mitigate the debris question?
Okay. I was thinking you were talking about, do we actually build satellites that are sort of primed for modularity and retrofit, as opposed to, are we simply going to try to go up and plant and work with what's there? But from a debris standpoint, I'm not sure we've addressed that specifically. But what I would tell you to the point of the rest of the question is, we don't build satellites, right, with this modularity in mind. They're highly integrated vehicles.
Right.
So when we do go up, we're going to be faced with every single satellite is its own Rolls Royce, and we're going to have to figure out how to get in there, how to look at it, how to work it, how to repair it on its own, right? And so we're going to have to work with that vendor to determine how to deal with that problem. So retrofits will probably look like bolt-ons because there will be very little else we can do. I can't see us doing major surgery.
Okay. Touching on the debris issue, sounds like it's going to be less of an issue for the retrofitting. So you've got Rocket Lab, and you've got Virgin, you've got others that are trying to enable these small sats. Do you anticipate a debris issue? How does DARPA anticipate engaging with that community to?
So we do have a history of looking at the debris problem. And in fact, we had a study a few years back that actually addressed this specifically and looked at some options to go do it. There's no doubt in my mind that, relatively speaking, there's going to be more stuff on orbit here in the next few years than there was.
Right.
Now, how great a threat that actually offers, I don't think is entirely clear. And what we're going to have to do about it to mitigate it is also not entirely clear. So I've heard lots of talk about ways to do it. But given the number of orbits that you would have to cope with, I personally believe the right answer is going to be responsible self-policing. So if you go up and put up 4,000 satellites, I expect that you will have a plan for how to get them back down when they're obsolete. Because I do not intend to go up there and clean up 4,000 satellites, and I don't think anyone else is going to have the wherewithal either. So I think that's going to have to be part of the discussion.
Do you think that's
likely?
Slightly optimistic?
Is George out there? Maybe. But I do think in the same way as confers, I think that discussion has to happen. And so we need to sit down and talk through how will you manage mega constellations. You're going to have all this stuff up there. It's a space traffic management issue, and frankly, it's an end-of-life obsolescence question about how people are going to bring down and put up new. We're going to have to look at it.
Yeah. And I would encourage, again, it's not just a domestic issue.
It's not.
Although most of these constellations that we're talking about are American.
Well, I hear about Samsung, so I don't know if that's going anywhere. But
Well, yeah, exactly. But I encourage you to engage the international community with that one as well. Last but not least, I'll ask a question here. Advantages of subsonic air launch versus supersonic launch in your XS-1.
Oh, gosh. Well, look, there are many concepts that are out there. I mean, we're rolling with the Boeing one, but I don't think getting into the issue of which way to get to orbit is actually all that valuable here. We selected this one. There are a bunch of other concepts. We're working on hypersonic concepts that will have similar capabilities. So I think we're more interested in the broad spectrum of what could be done rather than looking at the relative advantages of each.
So I know that you selected Boeing several months ago. How do you think that there's going to be any shift in how this administration works with that program, or frankly with DARPA and your office more specifically?
In terms of what exactly?
Well, how they view, let's say, some of your major programs, whether it's looking at XS-1, whether it's the satellite servicing, space debris.
I think
train's going to keep going on the tracks? Or?
I think the good thing about DARPA is that we've been vested with a charter that allows us to be not only innovative but independent. I was asked last night by somebody, how do you come up with your ideas? Do you go talk to the services and they tell you what to do? No. It's an independent agency. We hire program managers who are often frustrated by the places they've been previously. And they come in because they have new ideas, because they're innovative, because they weren't allowed to do those things other places.
And you harness it.
And we harness that to the extent you can. I don't see a major push to come in and modify all the programs. I do think, though, that we're very consonant with what I'm hearing out of Vice President Pence and the Space Council in terms of the commercial focus, looking to leverage a lot of the good stuff that's going on in new space. So I think it's good. I do.
Wonderful.
I think we'll be pushing harder that way. So.
Great. Well, and already your engagement with the industry in that community is helping set some precedent. So thank you so much.
We're having fun.
Thank you very much. With pleasure for your comments.
Thank you.